A little over a decade ago, two young men decided to do an experiment at Harvard University. This experiment has since become infamous in psychology circles. They wrote a book about it entitled The Invisible Gorilla. And they put it on YouTube so that people would be able to see for themselves where they were in this experiment. And since they put that video up on YouTube, millions have watched it, and it has become one of the most famous videos of all time. Their experiment is called the Selective Attention Test. And what they did was they invited a group of people to come in to a gymnasium and to stand in a circle and to pass the ball in around that circle. And as people were passing that ball around the circle, they videotaped them. And in the middle of that passing that was going on, a woman in a gorilla suit walks into the frame. She stops in the middle and she beats her chest. And then she walks out of the frame, all while the ball continues to be passed in this circle. The woman walking into the frame only is about 9 seconds of this minute-long video. And what the researchers did was they then invited viewers to come and to watch this video. And what they asked them, they gave them explicit instructions on what they were supposed to look for. They told these people to count the number of passes by players who were wearing white shirts. Well, of course, the researchers were not interested in the pass counting ability of these people who were watching the video. They instead were really interested to see if the viewers would notice something that they weren't looking for, something that was obvious, something as obvious as a gorilla entering the screen. And here's what became so fascinating with the results. Over half of the people who viewed that footage, about over half of them missed the gorilla walking into the room. I encourage you to look it up on YouTube. I have watched this video and I too missed the gorilla walking into the frame because I was so focused, so narrowly focused on the passing of the basketball and making sure to count each one. This Sunday, we talked about John chapter 9, the story of Jesus healing the blind man. And John devotes an entire chapter to this story, something that is rarely done, such attention to one story, one miraculous moment. And as John is focused in on this blind man, there are so many things that are happening in the story around it. There are the disciples who are trying to understand how God is at work, how God could allow somebody to be born blind, and what happened. Who is God if God allows that to happen? There were those who knew the blind man before Jesus healed him, and they were trying to figure out if it really was him. They were trying to figure out how this could be that this person that they'd known forever had been healed by God. Then there were the Pharisees who were trying to look for ways to trap Jesus. Were trying to figure out ways in which Jesus had done wrong by healing this man. And then there were the man's parents. The man's parents who claimed that, yes, that was their son. Yes, he had been born blind, but we don't know what happened. Why don't you ask him? Each of these groups of people, Jesus calls out as the ones who are actually blind. Blind to the ways in which God is working in the world. Blind to the ways in which God is moving. Blind to the Spirit. Now, what I love about this story is that we all have been in those situations where we have been blind. We all have been in places where we have blamed God when we shouldn't have blamed God, but we were so closed off into knowing and understanding the way that God works that we missed out in the bigger picture. Or we were so blind in knowing who somebody is and maybe not thinking that they deserved that miracle or whatever way God was working in their lives that we completely discounted it altogether. It could not have been them. We all have been the Pharisees that try to put God in a box and say God can only work in this way. And we miss out on the ways in which Jesus is moving and healing in the world. We all have been the parents where we have been afraid that we might lose our own community, afraid of what people might think if we told them how we see God working in the world. I was reflecting on this story this week and thinking about the ways in which we all have missed things that are going on around us because we put blinders on. Right? We put these blinders on. We're so focused. Maybe we're so focused in our to-do list and all the things that we've got on our plate, in our schedules, that we miss out on opportunities that God is placing around us. Maybe we're in the middle of a conversation with somebody and they're saying something that we really need to listen to, but we're so distracted by what is going on behind them or the things that we have to get going to, the things on our schedule, the places that we have to be, that we miss out completely in what they are saying to us. Maybe we're just so busy, we're out in nature and we're thinking about all the things that are going on that we miss just the beauty of just being, of missing out on hearing the birds singing. I was reflecting on this in my own life and thinking about the ways in which sometimes I look up at the night sky and it is such a beautiful dark night sky and I'm watching the planes that are flying over our house. But because I'm so focused on those planes, I miss out on the stars, the beauty of the stars that are behind them. And probably have missed out on hundreds of shooting stars because I was so narrowly focused on those planes. I also know that it's happened to me while I'm driving, right? Like I'll be in the car and I'll be driving along, I'll stop at a stoplight, but I miss a person who is in need because I'm so focused on getting to my destination. Or I'm in a grocery store and I'm so focused on trying to get everything on my list that I miss out on seeing the person behind me, hearing their story, hearing how maybe they are carrying a hurt, and I'm not able to be present with them because I'm so narrowly focused. We all have been blind in our lives. And the irony of this story is that those who are blind can see, and those who can see are blind. Often as Christians, we miss out on the ways that God is at work because we are so narrowly focused. We're so focused on who we see God is and how God is at work and maybe how God is calling us, but we miss out on the Spirit that moves and breathes in new places and is calling us into new spaces. But we're so focused that we miss out on that bigger picture of love and grace that are moving around us. And the problem is that can cause us harm, right? Like we can miss out on the ways in which God is moving in our own lives because we're so focused on, God, you need to answer this prayer this way, that maybe God's answered a prayer in a different way, a bigger way, and we miss out on that blessing. We miss out on seeing people who are around us and who are in need. And we have that opportunity, that calling to be able to be present with them, to see them, to listen to their stories, to help walk with them. But we're so busy and so focused that we miss out on the blessing that there is for us as we enter into those new spaces that are disorienting to us, those spaces that make us uncomfortable, those spaces that might even bring us some anxiety. As I was preparing for my sermon last week, I came across this story about Simon Rene Braille and his wife Monique. In 1809, they welcomed their fourth child into the world, a lively boy named Louis. And they lived in this small stone house near Paris, where Mr. Braille was the local harness maker. You know, leather working tools are really dangerous. And so the toddler had been instructed not to go into his father's shop alone. But you know how kids are. Lewis was still small, and so he snuck into the shop one time, and curiosity started to enter into his life, and he started to handle all of those fascinating tools. And as Lewis was inspecting an awl, that sharp tool used to punch those holes in the leather slipped, and it punctured a part of his eye with the tool. And that injured eye became infected, and the little boy could not keep his hands from rubbing it and scratching at it, and soon the infection began to spread into the other eye as well. So when this little boy, Lewis, was only 4, he became completely blind. He was very fortunate, though. He was able to study at the Royal Institution for Blind Youth in Paris. And he excelled as an organist. And at 12 years old, he began asking the question, how can the blind read? Well, over his summer break at home, Lewis was determined to find that answer. And as he moved and he groped around his father's shop in search of the right tool for the task, the awl presented itself as perfect for the job. The awl would make those raised dots that he had seen in the French military system of night writing. And with that very instrument that had blinded him, that had caused him the pain and the agony of not being able to see, that very tool, Lewis worked and he worked until he had created a system of dots where the blind could read and write, work math problems, compose music, just by rubbing their hands over those raised dots. And so the question is, what is your all? That thing that holds you back, that thing that has made you blind, either by your own doing, like this young man, Lewis, or by someone else, or just the way life is. Maybe it is a divorce or a lost career or a death of a family member that has caused you to be blind. Maybe it is just, things are going so well and I feel like I've got everything under control and I just become blind. But God wants to use those things that have made us blind to bring goodness into the world. And that is where hope is found, my friends. I once was blind, but now I see, right? We sing those words from Amazing Grace, those words that give us hope and inspiration. And what we've got to remember is that we often turn a blind eye. We often become so narrowly focused that we miss out on the ways in which God is at work in the world. And our job is to continually ask God to speak into our lives, to heal our blindness, to call us into spaces that are new, the way the Spirit is moving us in new ways that bring goodness into the world. And to ask God to heal our blindness and to use those things that blind us to help bring goodness. So my friends, let this week be a week of reflection, of thinking about the ways in which we are blind, the ways in which we are blind to how God is at work in the world with love and grace and compassion and goodness. And then ask Jesus to heal us from those places where we are blind and to help bring us into the world, to bring goodness and grace and love for all. We'll see you next week.